preference of the public, I move that we direct that the map drawer start from scratch without regard to previous maps.
I'll second Commissioner Kumar's motion.
Okay, there's a motion to start from scratch and a second. Is there any discussion? Senator
Madam Chair.
Barker.
I'll make a substitute motion that we do both approaches, that we start out with, working both with the existing maps as they are right now, which, and they've gotten it to this point in different ways, but also do a map from scratch so that we can compare the two and maybe benefit from whichever approach helps us and be able to reach a consensus on districts.
Madam Chair.
Senator Newman.
Madam Chair, I'll second the motion from Senator Barker. And speaking to that motion, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, I've been from, I guess, the second or third meeting very concerned that we, what I call, land the plane. I know there have been members of this commission that have been outspoken that they don't think it matters whether or not we land the plane, whether or not it passes the General Assembly, and whether we get a map. Well, it matters to me, and I think it matters to others. I think we should do everything we can to make sure that we end up with a process that gets through this commission and the General Assembly passes. And I do believe that if we're going to do that, there might be some semblance of a map that is somewhat known out there, might be somewhat critical to getting it over the finish line. And I know that's not where everyone is, but I think that if we are to be wise here, that we are going to look at this process and look at the next process, which, by the way, the people of Virginia voted for that process, that we go through both steps. And to me, the best way to do that is to at least take in mind what the current maps are. It may not matter to me or my area, because as most people in this commission knows, I'm a short-termer and probably not going to run for re-election anyway, and I'm happy. So y'all do in my area what you want. But I will tell you this, that I think if we're going to get it through to the other side and we're to overcome this idea, if you don't do it my way, it's okay for it to fail. I think it is important that we have at least maps that are driven both ways so that this, or the advantage of having both type of maps, so that this commission can hand off to the legislature what we hope is a map that gets to the final finish line. So that's the reason I would second the motion of Senator Barker.
So there's been a motion for multiple maps and a second, one with the starting point of blank, one with the starting point of our current maps. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Abrinio.
James Abrinio here. I'm a little confused by that logic because the reason that we chose, the commission voted to not use political data and then to use political data versus drawing essentially two separate maps that used political data and didn't use political data was the time. Now we're proposing to do two separate maps using essentially two separate frameworks from scratch and not from scratch. It seems like the logic will be the same. I'm not sure why we now have an outcome that's different. I will say I am interested in landing this plane. I want to be clear about that. But I think the best way that we land this plane is we come together as a commission. We come up with fair maps that everybody agrees is fair. We present it to the legislature, and the public buys in to the extent that if they then turn it down, there will be political repercussions from not landing that plane when a commission came together fairly. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on this motion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Kumar.
Yeah, I think it fundamentally, I would say, discredits this process and commission to say, well, the General Assembly's always done this. They passed an amendment or proposed language for an amendment with, seizing a little bit of control, letting citizens come along for the ride, still have to approve the maps on an up or down vote, still have the ability to kill things pretty easily on this commission. And to say, well, from the get-go, the only way that we're going to consider anything is if it's something that the General Assembly would have considered anyway, which is the whole point of this process, is people want something fundamentally different. And so, like Mr. Abranio said, we should draw the maps that the people want. I'd like to hear the rationale from people who are continually voting against the overwhelming voice of the people. Are we here to represent Virginia? Are we here to represent incumbents or parties? But no one really is talking about why. We're hearing that time's not an issue now. So why are we not doing what the people want? And to do this with the two options, it's going to be easy to say along the whole process, well, okay, we simple majority vote this, we simple majority vote that. It's very much just what the General Assembly might have done on their own anyway. And then it'll come to a vote and it'll be blamed on citizens if 3 citizens don't vote for this, the plane is not going to land either. And so far, not enough people are looking out for the citizens. And so if we get this process that's producing, even it's just the appearance, which it certainly appears so far to be a lot of what the General Assembly would have done on their own, that plane's still not going to land. And so continuing to bring up the old ways that the people, we're talking about 140 incumbents versus 8.5 million Virginians. And I care a lot more about the 8.5 million Virginians, and I get it, the 140 are part of that subset too. But there's no reason 140 should outweigh the will of, and I get it, we haven't heard from all 8.5 million of them, but 2/3 of those who voted for this process. And if we change it back to the old way, we're making a mockery of the process.
Is there anything additional? Mr. Wade? Sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion was made.
Maybe I would add something. This is Moon Duchin. Just to say, I understand the sentiments that are being described here, but there's a little bit of a false choice between.
Yes.
But I don't know that it's appropriate for the commission's debating, and we all might have very strong views, but I think other people debating is not appropriate at this point in time.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, this is Co-Chair Harris, and I would love to hear advisory counsel from Ms. Duchin. We have a plethora of experts both on legal and map drawing. And obviously, by some of the comments that are being made by commission members, we are desperate for guidance on how to do this process fairly and correctly. And I would love to hear from Ms. Duchin and her comments in council.
Okay. Ms. Duchin, do you understand the question posed by Ms. Harris?
I think so, and I mean to make only a very modest contribution here, which is to say that a blank map, the old map, those aren't the only starting points. Just that there are many others that can be provided, so that the choice doesn't have to be as stark as it seems. And this seems to be one of the contributions that can be made by a neutral process. So. But just to offer as an alternative starting point to, in a way, this agrees with the points that have recently been made by both sides. I think you can start with an empty map, you can start with the old map, and you can start with many others as well. I agree with what both map makers have asserted, that this can be done in a timely way and can be brought to completion in a timely way. So I only mean my comment to support what's already been offered by both sides, and to say that I think that there are ways to do this that is sort of avoid a false dichotomy between just incumbent protection and just an empty page. That there are other ways as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe there's still a motion on the floor. Yes, Mr.
Before we take a vote on anything, I want to be clear on something. I think that,
That's Mr. Hutchins.
Yeah, Brandon Hutchins here, sorry. When I signed up for this role, I intended to do the work of the people. The feedback that I've seen from folks that attend our meetings and call in want us to start a map from scratch. And because we have the ability to do that, I don't think that this is a negotiable thing. I think that we should do what the citizens of the Commonwealth and ask us to do, and that's to start from scratch. We got one shot at this, and I want us to make it count.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchins. The motion on the floor is to do two maps, or this is the substitute motion at this time, to do two starting points and two maps moving forward, one from a blank map, one from the current maps. Mr. Wade.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The motion was made by Senator Barker and seconded by Senator Newman to direct the map drawers to start both with maps that consider existing districts and maps that start from scratch without consideration of existing districts. Mr. Abrenio.
No.
Mr. Hutchins.
No.
Mr. Kumar.
No.
Mr. Feliciano.
Yes.
Ms. Thornton.
Yes.
Mr. Harrell.
Aye.
Delegate Adams.
Yes.
Senator McDougal.
Yes.
Senator Newman. Delegate Ranson. Senator Barker.
Aye.
Senator Locke.
No.
Delegate McQuinn.
No.
Delegate Simon.
No.
Ms. Harris.
No.
Ms. Papachenko.
No.
Madam Chair, the motion fails 7-9.
And now we take up the original motion on the floor.
Mr. Kumar, could you restate your motion?
My motion was that we direct the map drawers to start the process with, from a clean slate, disregarding previous maps.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. The motion was made by Mr. Kumar and seconded by Mr. Hutchins. Mr. Abrenio.
Yes.
Mr. Hutchins.
Yes.
Mr. Kumar.
Yes.
Mr. Feliciano.
Yes.
Ms. Thornton.
No.
Mr. Harrell.
Aye.
Delegate Adams.
No.
Excuse me, Delegate Adams, could you repeat that?
No.
Thank you. Senator McDougal. Senator Newman. Delegate Ranson. Senator Barker. Senator Locke.
Aye.
Delegate McQuinn.
Aye.
Delegate Simon.
Aye.
Ms. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Babachenko.
Aye.
Madam Chair, the motion carries 12-4.
Thank you, Mr. Wade.